So Games Workshop has been keeping us in a bit of a Warhammer 40k news drought recently. Very little officially given away about what's to come. However, we still know really quite a lot about what's coming up, between combinations of their rumours, teasers, leaks and preview products. So let's take a look at all the hints coming up for 10th edition so far. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today I thought we'd talk briefly about the lack of Warhammer news in terms of previews and things coming up, and then go through the sum total of all the current reveals, heavy teasers, leaks and safe bets that should be coming out over the remainder of 10th edition. At present though, in terms of official release roadmaps, Games Workshop have been keeping their cards a bit close to their chest. They dropped a pathway of which codexes would be coming out around the start of 10th edition. That took us up to spring with Chaos Marines, Tau, Custodians Orcs and Dark Angels. And since then they expanded on that with telling us that Genestealer Cults and Sisters and a Mystery Codex will be coming for summer. Genestealer Cults and Sisters have been a good few weeks ago now, and Games Workshop haven't really shown off anything since. And in general for Warhammer 40k, it's kind of unusual for Games Workshop to leave it quite this long between previews. In recent years, their normal way of doing things has tended to be for us to know what's coming before the last thing had already released, so the lack of previews is maybe a bit unusual. However, we do have a massive amount of information as to what's coming in 10th edition, even if most of it isn't 100% out in the open, model revealed and officially confirmed. It's certainly driven a bit of speculation as to why Games Workshop haven't been previewing anything recently. It's not entirely clear why they didn't show off anything at their latest tournament. Typically at these events they tend to have a reveal show and talk us through some upcoming releases. It seemed like it was kind of high time for it, given not that many releases on the horizon, but nothing turned up in the Tacoma event. I've seen all kinds of speculation as to why not. Some people saying that Games Workshop might be trying to get 40k folks to try Age of Sigmar 4th edition by keeping a bit of a drought of news around the same sort of time as the big Skaven Tide release. Maybe there's some possibility that they're trying to keep Codex titles hidden for a little while to disguise anything that might be going away, like say Deathwatch being folded into Imperial agents, or anything else being reinterpreted like Chaos Demons, or it could just be completely mundane, like less availability of staff for the previews, or having some slightly slower months coming up and not wanting to build up hype too early. As mentioned though, we do know quite a lot of what's coming. First up, as confirmed releases for Warhammer 40k, we've got 8 kit releases that we know are going to need individual releases at some point. 4 kill team kits in the Night Lords, Drukhari Mandrakes, Votann Jaegirs and the Genestealer Cult Brood Brothers. All of those all got launched in their big Versus boxes for the Beta Decima sort of kill team terrain, but so far none of those have been available individually. I'm sure there's really quite a lot of people waiting on at least some of them to be able to pick them up separately. Just so much more easy if you collect one of those factions but not both of them to pick up the kit without having to get the second team of guys that you might not be quite as interested in. I feel like all of them were pretty good supporting 40k releases as well, each important to their respective codexes in their own way. Otherwise, we've got 4 40k characters left over from the Battleforce box sets, the 2 Chaos ones in the Chaos Lord on foot and the Chaos Lord with Jump Pack. They need their individual release outside of the Dread Talons and Veterans Battleforces, and then the Genestealer Cult Benefactors and the Sisters Jump Cannoness. They came out in the Battleforces initially, and at some point they're just going to become a part of the regular range, likely as a minor release thrown in alongside other 40k stuff. One of the only other 40k miniatures that has been fully revealed at this point is Celestian Sacresant Aveline. She's a new character for a release alongside a Sister Battle Demon Breaker book, and like similar Black Library releases like Warboss Off-Tank Blackhawk for the Bad Moons, I think she's unlikely to be a permanent part of the Sister Battle range unfortunately, which kind of is a shame as a miniature just is a pretty spectacular one in my opinion. Of course I love the Flaming Sword making the Sister Battle Fleur-de-Lis sort of icon there. Pretty cool posing with the Sacred Rose iconography plus the little sensor cherubs. I guess she'll be turning up alongside the book when it comes out. For mainstream 40k releases though, it seems to be all but confirmed that the next release will be the Imperial Agents Codex. Not entirely sure exactly how they're going to brand and name it, but both rumours and product removals imply that it's going to be alongside Deathwatch. The focus is going to be nice and squarely on the Inquisition apparently. This has been speculated for really quite a while to be the Mystery Codex that Games Workshop had built for summer, though with that time frame it really could be as late as mid-September technically. Though I'd hope that we might get this one sometime in August, at any case without it even being revealed the existence of it yet, let alone any contents or miniature releases, it's most likely at least a good few weeks off. A leak from a few months ago showed these lore sections that appear to be from an Imperial agent's codex, talking about a bunch of supporting cast of characters to the Imperium, but there weren't any rule sections in this or any confirmations of models in or out of it. Basically confirming that something inquisitorial was going on though are Games Workshop's product takedowns on their main web store. Mysteriously missing in action on their web store are the Imperial Assassins, Inquisitor Greyfax and Kyria Draxus at the moment, all of which are pretty cool plastic miniatures for their range I think. Seems very unlikely that they're going away permanently, and to me that applies some sort of reboxing or new release format for them. Combat Patrol Deathwatch has also disappeared, as have the data cards for Imperial Agents and Deathwatch as well. And generally the data cards and the combat patrols have only been removed prior to a new release of the codex for that faction so far in 10th edition, such as when we had things like the Chaos Space Marine combat patrol get taken down shortly before the release of Codex Chaos Marines. This one feels like it's going to be one of the most weird and different codex releases out of 10th edition, so they might break their normal pattern of releases for it. Typically, inquisitorial agents and things have been used as an allied faction in Warhammer 40k up to this point in 10th edition, being able to take, say, Inquisitors, Assassins, or various retinues alongside your armies, either for lore purposes, and some of them can have some nice in-game bonuses too, like potentially giving some Imperial Knights access to some characters and infantry. If Games Workshop do decide to basically treat it as the other codexes they've had for 10th edition so far, then both a Combat Patrol and a Battle Force do at least seem fairly possible. We've had both of those for literally every single codex that's come out this year, so unless they decide to treat this one differently, it seems odds on. We did get an Agent of the Imperium boarding patrol back in 9th edition. Otherwise, for model releases, Kotiaz was hinted very heavily at the end of the Arcs of Omen series in 9th edition, a bit of a random cutaway to him towards the end of the series, and that was a book series that was very associated with miniature releases. Basically all the people who took centre stage got miniature releases, and it really did feel like that could have been a teaser for Kotiaz at the time. I think it made logical sense as well. If you're going to give them a token character release, he's pretty much one of the most obvious picks, unless they go for Karamazov or a more generic Inquisitor. It'd be really awesome to see a Primaris Deathwatch kill team, not sure if they'll do that at this point or not. I just hope that overall, when everything's released, the Deathwatch are still in an interesting space. It could be a very disruptive thing for them if they wind up getting locked out of choices they could take before in Codex Space Marines. Things can always be a bit uncertain and options have the chance to get lost if factions are reinterpreted like that. Otherwise, for one of Games Workshop's most recent hints, it seems that Games Workshop are building up for a Scions versus Tau confrontation in the lore over on Warhammer Community. Typically, Warhammer Community don't just post standalone lore articles unless they're promoting their products in some way or shape or form, and this one just has loads of things that fit well with a Kill Team release. The settings in the Chaunath area, like the previous Kill Team box where we had Sisters versus Tau Pathfinders. The lore excerpt doesn't mention them by name, but basically confirms that the force is a force of Tempestor's Scions, as they're led by a Tempestor, and they're going to be deployed to recover an alpha asset against the Tau, which feels like the exact sort of thing that you might expect for a Kill Team sort of conflict. We'll also get into the release cycle for the Beta Decima kill teams, the one on the aquatic type terrain. It should imply that late summer to early autumn sort of things there's going to be a new season for them, and this could be a good opportunity to shake up the setting if they wanted to. It also fits with previous internet rumours of Jump Pack Scions versus Vespid, which I think would be a really cool kill team box and have a lot of appeal both to Imperial Guard and Tau players. To my knowledge, it was Chapter Master Valrak who was the one who first shared that rumour. I've seen it all over the place on the internet since, not sure if it's literally just him or if it's been spread independently by other sources as well, but certainly the lore teaser looks like it'll fit really well with that, and would explain the curious lack of Vespid update in the Big Tau auxiliary update that did the Kroot so nicely. Vespid were clearly crying out for new models just as much, if not more. It looked like that lore article was part of a series, so if they drop a Tau-focused one from their perspective, mentioning deploying Vespid Stingwind teams to the area, that seems like that would pretty much cement it. And I feel like that could be really quite a good fun release both for Tau and Guard. In the fairly near future as well, we've got the expected release of the 40k Combat Patrol magazine, at least in the UK, likely to follow in other locations like the US and various places around the world after. This one's the 10th edition version of Conquest and Imperium by Hachette Partworks. The idea being that you have a weekly magazine with a Warhammer miniature or more included, plus a bunch of paints and things to build them up. And if you do manage to keep on top of the miniature painting deluge that you're going to get, you'll have an awful lot of miniatures painted up and ready to go at the end of it. This one's expected to release in the UK in August, if those dates by Forbidden Planet turn out to be right. I believe that hinted that they'd be towards the end of August, so like the 28th or something. And that will be fairly equivalent to how Imperium launched when that one came out in 9th edition. Then if they do manage to keep things to the same timetable, this would imply a USA release in January 2025 or thereabouts, and then sort of July time in Australia. And it came to plenty of other countries, plenty of places in Europe and stuff beyond that, so it is quite area dependent. If you do subscribe to the whole collection, then it basically makes up 9 combat patrols and then basically a bonus unit for each one of them. There is the option of a premium subscription for yet more stuff if that's desired. It looks like the first few issues will be some starter sets, Tyranids and Space Marines before they move on to other stuff. Promo material showed this picture, plus one of a new unique Infernus Marine Sergeant as well. Though based on previous releases, it's probably best to judge it by the final release materials, as sometimes they do tend to shift things around. The promo image that they had has changed at least once since it was initially announced in January. Could be an interesting option for some good deals and things though. If you can manage to find a way to get hold of them at least somewhat reliably, if you're able to cherry pick an issue or two, then that can be some big savings. And it can just be helpful for people reselling them on eBay as well. You might be able to pick up some savings even if people are selling them second hand. For a 40k adjacent release, one of the next big boxes to come out will be the Horus Heresy Mechanicum box, launching the plastic version for the cog boys of the Horus Heresy, and this one's likely to follow the same pattern as the Solar Auxilia, this Mechanicum battle group being the first way to get your hands on some of them. This one comes with some Thalax, 2 Castellax Automata, a great big Triaris armoured conveyor, and 20 text valves, and then they'll have a more general release of that to follow with a bunch of stuff coming out individually, such as the big Thanatar Siege Automata and the Archmagos Prime. Most of these aren't really directly applicable to Warhammer 40k, I feel like quite a lot of AdMech players will be more than happy if Games Workshop did decide to release some 40k rules for them. It's not like they don't enjoy digging up relics from the distant past to sling them into battle. I guess the Archmagos could make for a pretty fun tech priest at least. Sticking with the 40k adjacent releases for one more thing, the Necromunda Malstrain characters got quite a bit of attention as well. I feel like you could certainly use pretty much all of these as stand-ins for a Genestealer cult army, or maybe Tyranids if you wanted a freaky broodlord. There's the Malstrain Coalescence, the Malstrain Alpha, and the sort of reborn tech priest that was remade in the image of the guy who made these Malstrain Genestealers. Generally pretty well received body horror type miniatures. Unfortunately they are made of Forge World resin, not plastic though, so that means that they're both a bit expensive and a bit harder to work with. I feel like that is probably a factor in limiting their appeal a bit, even if the sculpts are rather cool ones. Beyond the currently revealed or currently teased things, the picture's probably a bit more murky in terms of the order of the codexes, but given 40k's release patterns, they will be updating all the codexes in the game, going through them one by one and giving them a new release for 10th. We've had quite a lot of the most major and most played factions, though there's absolutely loads of them left. As mentioned, it sounds like Agents of the Imperium is rumoured to be next. I'd guess with Deathwatch included in that somehow, unless they give them a standalone book release and bring them out at the same time. They've definitely done that before with things like the Knights. And beyond that, we have the Blood Angels, Space Wolves and Black Templars as the Divergent Space Marine chapters remaining. Astra Militarum, Grey Knights and Imperial Knights, presuming Grey Knights don't get swallowed up in an Agents of the Imperium book. That seems less likely given that they've got far more models in their army. Then for the ranks of Chaos, we have pretty much all of them besides Chaos Space Marines, Death Guard, Thousand Sons, World Eaters, and probably Emperor's Children as well, if they are indeed a new army within 10th. Chaos Knights and Chaos Demons, presuming the demons aren't reinterpreted in god-specific codexes or anything. And then we've had really quite a lot of the Xenos already, as big armies with big followings. The only ones left are Aeldari, Drukhari, and Leagues of Votann. Timing-wise, there's nothing really to suggest that Games Workshop will abandon their fairly successful 3-year editions, and if that's the case, it's highly odds-on that most of these codexes will have come out within the next 12 months or so it does seem that the pace of these might really step up a bit. I expect most of these to be out next August. For the equivalent for 9th edition, the only one that was after that were the Astra Militarum, cropping up unusually late in the edition due to having a big release wave. In general, Games Workshop tend to not like releasing codexes in, say, the last 12 months of an edition, due to books being partly invalidated by new rule sets. Though given we had a hard reset of the game for 10th edition, the same is far less likely to happen for 11th. I feel like any codexes for 10th edition are odds on to still be game legal for 11th, which at this point I'd guess more to be a sort of core rules update of the sort of thing that we had from 8th to 9th. In any case though, for the codexes coming out, basically all of these armies I would guess will get at least one miniature release, a new combat patrol to replace the one that they had in 9th, though often Games Workshop does seem to try and make these combat patrols worse than they were before. I'd be kind of surprised if say the Drukhari one is quite as good once they've redone it. For every codex in 2024 we've had a one and done Battle Force box set to come with a character inside it, or a whole release wave of new miniatures if the army is lucky enough to get one. And so far these have generally sold pretty big, so I guess they're going to keep them coming as the new normal. Typically Games Workshop either tends to give a faction either just a single character release or a major release wave with a bunch of units coming. At the moment we don't know which ones will be the lucky ones out of this list, though as we'll get to I feel like we've had some heavier hints for some factions more so than others, plus there's odds on to be at least one new army this edition, if not more. Before we jump into a few more specific codex things, I thought I'd just quickly mention the channel's giveaway for August, and this one's going to be a big knight household style giveaway for 3 winners to get a custom knight household of their choosing, basically picking any 3 plastic knights made by Games Workshop, whether they're Imperial or Chaos or the big tall plastic Cerastus ones, and then any one big knight can be swapped out for 4 armigers or war dogs if you want a bit more of a blend between the big knights and the small ones. Hopefully this one should be a good way to start a new army with around about 1500 points worth of models, and it can be quite a fun and focused hobby project, being a good blank canvas to do all sorts of crazy conversions and things. As ever, there'll be 2 equal ways to enter the giveaway, both of them links down in the video description. Either you can support the channel on Patreon for any amount each month, it is the main thing that allows me to keep on making content as my full-time thing, with new videos out basically every day. That gets you automatic entry into the giveaways each and every month. Otherwise, you can equally enter by supporting the channel on social media completely for free. To do that, you do these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the Facebook page, and then to actually enter the draw for the giveaway, a giveaway post appears on Facebook on the 1st of August. It turns up at midnight UK time and is active for a bit over 24 hours. To enter, respond to that post with a picture of any 40k mini or other imagery, with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo, the last bit just mainly to stop bots and spammers from running off with the prizes. Following that, the draw will be done with a random number generator and announced on the channel update video on YouTube around the 4th of August, and I'll get in touch with the winners to choose their knights and order them in, posting them out after that. In any case, feel free to check out the links in the video description if you'd like to enter for this one, and of course there will be further giveaways each and every month. Moving on to the few teasers that Games Workshop have given us of future codexes though. One of the single most clear ones is Emperor's Children. If this one doesn't turn out to be a late 10th edition release, I'll be pretty surprised. There's just very clear parallels with the World Eaters release that they got back in 9th edition. The Chaos Space Marine Codex came out. Curiously enough, none of the World Eaters units were in it, none of the Khorne Berserkers or Kharn the Betrayer. They were given a stopgap index, just as Emperor's Children have been this time around. And then in the 9th edition closing campaign, World Eaters came out as their own codex with their miniature release. Basically all of that just seems to have happened for the Emperor's Children this time around, and it has been expected for really quite a long time, given that they're the last deity legion that hasn't got a big update yet, and the Noise Marines and Lucius the Eternal have needed updates since forever. When their book and launch does drop, new Noise Marines, Lucius the Eternal, and Demon Primarch Fulgrim seem to be absolutely 100% certain in my mind. Then beyond that, I'm sure we'll get plenty of supporting releases. I'd say new Terminators are odds on, given that the Thousand Sons and Death Guard have them. Raised Cultists is something that all the others have, whether they're Poxwalkers, Zangors, or Jackals. All the other deity legions at least have Summit-themed characters, even if the World Eaters just have the one generic pick. And then beyond that, there's plenty of other possibilities, Slaaneshi Demon Engines, maybe a possessed alternative similar to 8-Bound, or maybe some sort of a unique Sonic Dreadnought could be fun. Definitely lots of possibilities. I wouldn't be too surprised if the ranged launch is kind of small scale, similar to World Eaters though. It looks like they might not be the only Chaos Legion to be getting a glow up in 10th edition though. We've had a very on the nose teaser of Thousand Sons Automata coming at some point. Games Workshop often lets us know about miniatures that are coming in the lore or in codex art and things before they actually come out with the full miniature, and their lore from the Pariah Nexus was just massively specific, very clearly talking about a class of automata that they can't field in their codex yet and going really in depth on them. The narrative almost just felt a bit clumsy, just trying to build up these things far more than they really needed to. I think that people would have been excited for Thousand Sons Automata of any sort, but they basically went with the lore saying that they've reawoken these old tech things from days past, maybe things like their Archaea Castellax sort of automata. and then they messed around with them with their tech sorcerers summoning a bunch of demons to infuse them with. And then once they've been in the Pariah Nexus, they've both been harvesting bits of Abmech knowledge, plundering some vaults held by tech priests, and also acquiring loads of Blackstone to infuse into them as well, just in case Games Workshop felt like they hadn't built these guys up enough to be weird demon engine psychic tech things already. I'm not 100% sure if these will definitely turn up in 10th edition, though I'd guess it's odds on at this point. And if so, it'd be good news for the Thousand Sons. They've really not had a new release in a good long time now, since the big one with Magnus and their Terminators and things. They've only had the Infernal Master in recent years. I've seen plenty of people speculating that these rumour engines could represent the Thousand Sons Automata, though there certainly could be something else like a Chaos Knight. They basically have armour plating of a sort of unusual weathered kind of pattern. They do look a sort of mechanical chaos type thing by all those barbs and spurs. I saw speculation saying that the things on the sort of ankle joint that you can see on the left, on the front shin plate of that, it almost looks like the Thousand Sons green and blue line sort of things that they have on their headdresses. It's maybe a little bit hard to say for sure in grayscale. Definitely feels like a fun way to expand these Thousand Sons with extra units and options. It both is a nod to their past and also doesn't really detract from the majority of the Legion being Rubric Marines as well. For the Aeldari, I had shared to me what looks like a sculpt for the new Azaman miniature, one of the many Phoenix Lords that they still need to update, alongside a bunch of Aspect Warriors. I was asked by the source not to show the image, though I think that it's probably legitimate, and I guess that at least he'll be coming alongside the Codex. But for Aeldari players' sakes, I hope that it comes with quite a lot of other fun stuff as well. It would be really nice if they managed to round out the update of the Aspect Warriors. Warp Spiders are one of the oldest miniatures in Warhammer 40K right now, and Swooping Hawks and Fire Dragons need some love too, as do the other Phoenix Lords. I think there's a good chance that Aeldari gets a big release in 10th edition, as Games Workshop often seem to release armies in sort of two phases, a big release 1 edition followed by a slightly smaller release for the same faction the edition after. And Aeldari certainly got a big release last edition, so this could be the small follow-up one if they're lucky. Another strong possibility for a larger release could be the Blood Angels. Like the Dark Angels, they were kind of limited in how they came out due to no generic Primaris versions of the units that they want chapter-specific versions of. It just seemed unlikely Games Workshop would come out with unique Primaris Death Company and Sanguinary Guard until we had the regular Primaris Assault Marines out on offer, and now we have the Jump Intercessors. If they follow the sort of Dark Angels pattern of release, it might mean that we get a sort of medium-sized but incomplete update of the faction this time around. Maybe some characters and some of their unique units reimagined, but not all of them. It looks like the Dark Angels basically had the Deathwing side of their army, plus a few other bits redone, and then the Ravenwing side of the army, plus Ezekiel, will most likely come out in 11th edition. Seems at least there's a fairly good chance of similar for the Blood Angels, and Games Workshop also have shown off this rumour engine picture of some swooping parchment. There are quite a lot of possibilities for this, people saying Sisters of Battle or Stormcast Eternals for it, though it's certainly not applied to anything of those so far. The prosecutors for Age of Sigmar didn't have these, plus it does look kind of similar but doesn't actually appear to correspond to anywhere specific on the Celestian Sacresant Aveline miniature. The parchment and things look a bit different without tears in them like this one does, and no one part of the miniature seems to match up with the sort of text notes and the things on this image. It could easily fit in with a new Sanguinor or Asterath for the Blood Angels. If so, then hopefully that's not all they get. It'd be really cool to see a major release wave. For other teasers, the Guard have got a whole slew of different rumour engines that seem to be applying to them. Most of these rumour engines on the bottom right here feel like they could easily apply to the Astra Militarum, probably more so than the rest. Maybe the sort of bandage dispensing servo skull thing might be a bit less specific though. Whatever they're getting, it looks like at least one thing is some sort of fairly good sized terrain diorama type thing. Looks like there's a big sculpted scenic base for whatever it is, some bullet laced fortifications, a whole bunch of sandbags and grenades and things, and possibly that minefield marker could also be from the same thing. Kind of intrigued to see what that'd be. Feels like it'd probably have to be at least a fairly big miniature, unless we're getting something like Yarick on a ridiculously big scenic base perhaps. Otherwise there's a bullet-riddled standard that also looks incredibly guard appropriate. Maybe some sort of other command squad for a different regiment or a banner bearer character. Maybe the servo skull could be for some sort of medic, like a new reimagined Death Corps quartermaster perhaps. Though realistically that could be for anything else from the Imperium, and not even necessarily Core 40k. Could be something more Kill Team or Necromunda focused. For other codexes, Leagues of Votann seem very likely to get a wave too. They're another army that had a good initial release wave, but people are expecting plenty more to come from them in 10th edition. Again, they strike me as one of the armies that get a fairly big release wave and then follow up with a smaller one the next edition, maybe kind of similar to what we had with Sisters of Battle. I'd say it's odds on that they get a unit of jump pack releases, as we had this guide from the Kill Team set that both show us what Leagues of Votann jump packs look like and also just confirm that they have them in the first place. And if so, then why wouldn't they field some units of them? Maybe other more likely things could be some sort of walker or perhaps a land speeder type vehicle. There could be other good options to fill out their roster. With any 40k release, probably odds on to get more characters to go alongside as well. Maybe one of which could explain this hologram rumour engine that we had that people seem to think clicked with Leagues of Votann sort of look for the hologram projector more than most. That's kind of broadcasting an image of the Fortress of Redemption, so maybe trying to besiege some Imperial enclave. I feel like that one's a bit shaky to declare Votann at this point though. Definitely could apply to plenty of stuff. For the World Eaters, I certainly hope that they get a follow-up release wave as well. They did get a good core of their army in 9th edition, but still are an army that have less unique stuff than even the Thousand Sons, even if a bunch of their things are ports from Age of Sigmar in the past. One miniature release that seems basically 100% confirmed in my eyes is the Berserker Surgeon. These things were mentioned in the lore all over the place in the last World Eaters release, maintaining the Butcher's Nails being the ones that make the 8-bound and basically functioning as the depraved apothecaries of the Legion to try and make them into an actual functioning fighting force and perhaps make sure that their anger and rage is focused on the enemy and recruiting new World Eaters to the cause. Would be nice to have another HQ in the roster. Would be interesting to see what they could do leading Khorne Berserkers, or maybe 8-bound I guess, if they're involved with the creation of them. Otherwise for the World Eaters, another rumoured thing are Juggernaut Cavalry. Again, I'd say there's probably a good chance for this one, given that we had a Juggernaut Lord and Lord Invocatus. It just maybe feels a bit more appropriate if they had some cavalry to go alongside. And certainly for the 9th edition Codex, it was kind of conspicuous that the World Eaters basically had no fast attack whatsoever besides Chaos Spawn. Games Workshop maybe don't super often allow cavalry to lead infantry this edition. It does happen time to time for things like Lord Solar Leontus, for example, but even he at least has the option of leading Rough Riders. In any case, I think it would be pretty awesome if they had some Cornate Steeds to lead into battle. It did appear that they were teased in the artwork as well, at least having other maniacs with chain axes, mounted on steeds and following along in the wake of the guys leading the charge. Really hoping that World Eaters get another big release wave though. Will be fun to see some things like Red Butcher's Terminators potentially as well, which were a bit disappointing when they didn't come out with them in 9th. I'd absolutely love to see some sort of medium-sized demon engine, maybe similar to what the Death Guard got, perhaps a reinterpretation of the Forge World Blood Slaughterer. One kind of anti-release that Games Workshop is probably going to be doing in 10th edition to bear in mind are the Forge World removals. As each codex has dropped so far, Games Workshop have basically taken the axe to rule support and often miniature kits for basically any Forge World miniatures in Warhammer 40k that aren't a Titanic super heavy sort of scale. So the Necrons just kept their Seraptic Construct, the Orcs just kept their Gargantuan Squiggoth, and basically everything else got removed. Otherwise, Marines, Chaos, and Tower have all taken some pretty major losses so far. The rules for their other units have been going to Legends, and Forge World Scope has been redirected to focus on really big stuff for 40k, things that are more sort of Titanic scale, plus things like Heresy, the Old World, and their skirmish games. Out of armies that are going to be most affected by this are the Imperial Guard and the Aeldari. Both of those still have really quite a large Forge World range as they go. The Astra Militarum in particular, which still have an enormous amount of Forge World tanks of various descriptions and plenty of other fun support vehicles. I feel like that will be a heavy blow if that just went en masse to Legends, though it seems likely. Same for the Aeldari with some fun stuff like supporting Hornets or Shadow Spectres. Seems likely that anything that doesn't pass the sort of super heavy scale mark is probably going to go the way of Legends, and probably a fair few of the kits discontinued on top of that. Similar kind of things have been happening to the Finecast kits in 40k. Games Workshop really do seem to be trying to push their core 40k game just to be pure plastic as much as possible for the future. And again, as most codex have come out, most of the Finecast resin relics have been removed from the range one by one. Say for example, a cluster of Necron characters when they came out, or the old Tau ethereals like Ornvar and Ornshi, or Orc special characters like Boss Zagstruck. or Mad Dog Grotznik. To my mind though, it certainly makes the things that stayed in this rotation kind of conspicuous, and my guess is that any of the Finecast kits that have remained in the range are probably at some stage in the future going to get a plastic release, though I guess for the already released codexes a whole bunch of those are probably going to come in 11th edition if they do indeed wind up happening. Maybe a few particularly good examples could be the Space Marines Cato Sicarius, who we did see artwork of him in Primaris form in the past. Huron Blackheart for the Chaos Space Marines, who doesn't even have a miniature on sale, but is really quite a big figure in the lore. I wonder if he could maybe come back as sort of, say, a campaign series like we had at the end of 9th. And perhaps similar for Trazen the Infinite, he alone survived the Necron Finecast character purge. It did just seem very unlikely that Games Workshop would remove him and not update his miniature at some stage, so my guess is that it's being kept in the codex as a bit of a placeholder and his miniature will be released at some point, whether or not it's later in 10th as a random release or whenever the next Necron codex happens in 11th. While we're looking to the slightly further future as well, we're another fairly staple release in Games Workshop's calendar. And maybe while it feels weird to be talking about Christmas in July, it does mean that the reveal of these, which normally comes in November, is only around about 4 months away now, even if no doubt there's a bunch of stuff to come before then. In Games Workshop's recent history, they've generally done 6-ish Warhammer 40K ones each year, and these tend to skew towards armies that are often a little bit more popular than some, and particularly ones that got a biggish release in recent history. Over the past couple of years, they've tended to include at least some fairly new miniatures in the box sets to add to their appeal. Space Marines tend to be the most likely to get a Battle Force box, though they haven't always been particularly well received, like the sort of fast attack one that they had last year. We already had both Marines and Tyrannids last year to tie in with their releases, and I guess for armies that have had big releases this year, we've had Dark Angels and then Tau and Kroot. I would not be surprised to see something like a Dark Angels box set with Lionel Johnson in it, or maybe a Tau release, either with Commander Farsight, who was a fairly recent miniature, or possibly with Kroot allies. I guess probably one or the other rather than both, but who knows. In any case though, if any factions do get some big releases over the next few months, at least a reasonable chance they might come out with a Christmas box for them. One other thing that people have been kind of expecting might happen at some point is a Dark Mechanicum release for 40k. Games Workshop does enjoy adding entire new factions into the game. Obviously they tend to sell well as nobody has them yet. 8th edition gave us Custodes, Death Guard and revamped Sisters, which were basically an entirely new army pretty much, and also made Chaos Knights more their own thing rather than Renegade Knights. In 9th edition we got two very clear new factions in World Eaters and Leagues of Votann. And then in 10th edition it's shaping up that we'll get Emperor's Children. It does make me wonder if we're going to get a second new faction alongside of it, of which Dark Mechanicum just seems far more likely than the other candidates to me. I've done a few videos over the years for what sort of factions people would like to see added to Warhammer 40k. Dark Mechanicum has often been towards the top of the list, and during the time that I've been doing this, Games Workshop have ticked off quite a lot of the other possibilities. World Eaters and soon to be Emperor's Children, actually giving the Kroot some proper attention, and the Squats returning as Leagues of Votann. They've certainly set up the 40k narrative to go with that as well, with Vashtor appearing as a thing and doing nefarious things across the galaxy, or looking for his vault of super weapons. It does feel like they're setting him up to do something major, and having it a big narrative stroke that also coincided with him unleashing a new faction into 40k could be a really good move for Games Workshop playing the long game if they wanted to. I think if anything I'd be more surprised if they didn't wind up doing Dark Mechanicum at some point, though I certainly wouldn't be too surprised if they chose not to do it in 10th edition and it was for later on sometime. To me it does feel like they're waiting in the wings for some point in the future though. Finally, again going by past precedent, Games Workshop will probably do an end of edition campaign after the 10th edition codexes come out. It's a fairly stable way of them basically wrapping up each edition as they've done so far, even if exactly what content they've put in the books have been a bit different aside from the lore. In 7th edition we had the Gathering Storm that had the fall of Cadia and then the return of Guilliman. In 8th edition they had the Psychic Awakening, which encompassed quite a lot of narratives, but the end of it focused on them delving into the Pariah Nexus and discovering a bunch of Necrons for 9th edition. And then 9th edition itself wound up in Arcs of Omen, Vashtor and Abaddon going around building super weapons and coinciding with the return of Angron and the return of the Lion. These often tend to be a good way for Games Workshop to wrap up an edition, as they usually don't want to be releasing codexes just a few months before the next edition comes out. There's already enough outcry when they do it kind of close anyway, as with the Guard and World Eaters ones, which came out around about 6 months or so before the launch of 10th. If they do choose to go with a big edition end campaign, I'd guess that'd be probably when we're going to see Fulgrim, maybe in a similar release slot to Angron and the World Eaters. And if Arcs of Omen is any precedent, then it is a good chance for other big character releases from the lore. As mentioned previously, I really wouldn't be surprised to see some of either Cato Sicarius, Huron Blackheart or Trazen the Infinite come back if they decided to get them mixed up in the narrative somehow. I'm sure Games Workshop will keep the Primarchs coming, and out of the Loyalist ones, it would seem most likely for Leman Russ to come back, given that out of the major Divergent chapters, Rogol Dawn will be the one for the Black Templars, and he's Imperial Fist really. The Deathwatch don't have them, and the Blood Angels have the loss of Sanguinius at the very centre of their backstory, so I'd guess that maybe a big reinterpreted Sanguinor might be the best that they could get. Given that the Space Wolves have an entire army in miniature range, it does seem highly likely that Russ will be the next one, even if plenty of the other Loyalists could turn up again. I'm sure people would love to see Vulcan, and I feel like he would be a good choice, but I just can't see them doing him before Russ comes out. In any case, again, judging by 9th edition and 8th edition sort of time frames, we'd expect this one to be around about something like 6 months before the launch of 11th edition, so around about 18 months from now, with lots and lots of codexes and major army release waves in the meantime. In any case, hope you've enjoyed a bit of a roundup for my expectations of 10th edition to come, starting out with a few more definite things and then going off to the things for lots of possibilities. Fingers crossed Games Workshop won't keep us too long in giving us a bit more definite clarification, at least for the near future. Really looking forward to finding out what's happening with the Inquisition and any Codex roadmaps that they might be generous enough to throw our way as well. In any case, let me know your thoughts as to what you're expecting next. Look forward to hearing them as always down in the comments, including anything else that I might have missed that we'd had confirmed from Games Workshop in one way or another. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming out just about every day. I'll certainly look forward to covering any news that they do share with us. And also feel free to check out any of the links down in the video description if you'd like to enter for that nice household giveaway for August, either the Patreon page to back the channel and get automatic entry each month, or the Facebook page for the giveaway post appearing on the 1st of August. For channel Patreon supporters, there are a few other advantages as well. Seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, automatic entry into those prize giveaways, and a few other bits like Discord roles and names in the credits and things. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help keep the videos coming, the link's in the video description. In any case, an enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.